Toodly-doos.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another all-new X's for Show. I'm Nico, and you can check me out at Nico Action. That's NicoAction, and I cannot wait to get bracketeering.
And I'm TK. You can find me at XNate, XGray, X. I'm medium on bracketeering.
And that makes me Kev O'Reilly. You can find me on the socials at KEVOREALLY, but mostly you can find me pulling the strings on the programs here, and I am really excited. It's going to be a nice, light, fun, breezy one, like the title suggests. It's to get to know those of us here at X's for Show.
So I've been outvoted, and excitement wins the feelings about bracketeering bracket.
Okay, and I appreciate what you're saying,
isn't it?
I appreciate what you're saying, that this is about getting to know us, but it's not. It's about comparing several TV shows that came out at the same time that were unforgivably similar. And we're here to pass judgment. No, we're not here to pass judgment, but we're here a little bit to say what we feel about these shows, talk a little bit about what it's like that creates parallel streams of media, right? Something a lot of people don't realize is like one executive guy will be like, hey, I want this movie made, and he will pass it down 10 people. That's a good note not to do that shoulder shimmy again because the camera doesn't like it. But he'll be like, I want this movie about like insect people being neurotic made. And Disney's like, all right, well, you work here, Jeffrey Katzenberg, so let's have it made here. And then he goes, but I'm going to go over to that DreamWorks place. And DreamWorks is like, you want to make the same movie? And he goes, yeah, I want to make the same movie, of course. And they're like, oh, okay. And then Disney's like, oh, all right, well, we're still making our bug movie. And that's how you get Ants and A Bug's Life at the exact same time. And
we have one that is really that exact story. And that's, for me, when we were kind of batting around what we wanted to do for this week's bracket, we were like, let's do something TV. And that was really what I got to thinking about, was this insane situation where in 2007 or like the end of 2006, these two shows came out where I was just like, how is it possible that this similar of a concept is happening at the same time? And it's very glitch in the matrixy. You're like, something is weird and wrong.
It feels impossible.
The Colonel is behind this.
It's always the Colonel. And you know, and then you get a little older and you discover like the Hollywood machine and the stupid ways that it does stuff, and we're all just kind of slaves to it. It's just kind of happening at us. So, you know, that's something we're going to talk about.
Okay. So I'm really excited because, this show, X's for Show, has been about comics for a really long time, but like comics are one thing that we love on this program. We love all sorts of things, and one of those things that we love is television. And it's exciting to get to talk about like TV at a swath, because like what you watch says so much about your interests. I watch a lot of videos about real crime while eating peanut butter in my underwear. And that should tell you a lot about me. And we're going to do the PG version of that. I got to stop doing that shoulder shimmy.
The shoulder shimmy's okay.
You can't help it. Well, you just got to pick a better shirt for it.
I got to not be wired.
And here's the thing. The camera autofocuses. So, you know, we get this really cool effect where it's like Angel Nico from the heavens, and then sharp relief, he is upon us. There you go.
So, okay.
Okay.
Now, for those of you who don't know, bracketeering is kind of based on the March Madness style of bracketing, or as we called it before March Madness, bracketing. And it's where we pick two things, we kind of compare them, and you know, the idea of March Madness is historically compare common. Hey, Shimei, you stay. Thank you, Jacob Kruger, for throwing that in. I do love seeing one of our amazing contributors hanging out with us, playing around, enjoying one of our many things. So we're going to keep comparing these things all the way down, even though they're not going to stay the same thing of similar shows. We're going to say, hey, what of the similar shows stands out? We're going to have a good time. And just to give people a little idea, the gentleman to my... Okay, great.
Nailed that. You nailed it.
Direction
Hey.
is responsible for all of the beautiful brackets you're going to see. And the gentleman right down there, looking all sorts of super flying Tony Stark today, right, is responsible for all of the beautiful images. And this guy right over here is just super grateful to have this amazing team doing all this amazing art. So I just wanted to put it out there for the two handsome gentlemen who keep this show looking so handsome. So,
and we all come together to talk about what we're going to do for a bracket. You'd be shocked at the number of brackets that we have kind of waiting in the wings that we talk about. We refine the concept. I threw a ton of TV shows at everybody and a ton of initial concepts, and these two guys really helped me whittle it down and get like a good list going. And it is a collaborative and very fun effort. And I'm always excited for the one that we're doing, but we always come up with like 8 other ideas at the same time that we make one. So I always get really excited about the upcoming ones that you're going to see as well.
I'm already thinking about holiday ones, especially knowing how high up the bracket goes. I really think we could go up into 64.
If only there were episodes. 16 days of Christmas.
Now, before we can even get that excited and get to the holidays, I was thinking about the other ones that we thought about we wanted to do for this, and last night I was like, Kevo, I need you to get started on this right away. So, I'm also in the can't wait to do the others, but that doesn't mean that this one is any less amazing.
No,
this one is one that I feel like people constantly bring up, this era of TV shows that were super compared and super, oh, look how many similar programs there are coming out, and I'm really excited to bring them up. So, without any further ado, I think we should get a little bit into our game and take a look at some of the shows we're going to be comparing. Oh, look at that beautiful bracket. I am so excited. When I was like, hey, let's do some March Madness stuff, and TK was like, oh, no, there's things for that. And I'm like, no, I will get into Google Sheets, and I will begin to make target and thing, and maybe Kevo can make straight lines to put in Google Sheet. And TK was like, you need to believe that people know what they're doing. Provided this amazing program, and I could not love it more.
Yeah, thank you, Bracket Fights. You're great. Your tier maker is also great. We're going to have some fun with that at a later date. And, we're just, for all the credit that I was given, this is super easy. So, and of course, we always post our brackets online, so you guys are welcome to check them out and do them yourselves. Share your answers with us. And, really, the hero, as always, is Kevo, who does the real heavy lifting with the design work.
Stop. What you talking? Well, this is just a little thing that I cooked together for us. No big deal.
Okay, so
It's always a team. I love this team, and I love doing this, and I love that we're doing this to introduce the many things that we love. It's why I wore my shirt that is a Star Wars shirt, but has the Buffy font on it, where it says Rebel.
Oh my
because
God.
we love so many things. And one of the things that we bonded on early on was our love of these two very oddly similar soaps.
Yep.
Nico?
Yeah. Okay, I have to be honest. I had no idea anything about these two shows. These came into my life at a time where I was like, is it counterculture? Then I'm not into it. The only things I watch are So Notorious and reruns of The Price is Right. So you can just go eat it. And Kevo was eventually like, you should give modern soaps a try. There are things after Melrose Place. And I was like, fine. And we took a look at One Tree Hill and the OC. Now, these two shows launched within a month of each other or so. One Tree Hill running from September 23rd, 2003 to April 4th, 2012. That's 9 seasons, 187 episodes across 2 networks, the WB and CW, which were really kind of like one network. It's not a big deal. And then the OC, which ran 4 seasons and less than half at 192 episodes from April 5th, August. From August 5th, 2003 to February 22nd, 2007, it all ran on Fox. And, when you think about these two shows, they really represented like a teenageness. And it's so interesting because One Tree Hill lived long enough. Oh, hey, Tori. It's so great to have you in the chat. One Tree Hill lived long enough to kind of 90210 and become about old people.
Yeah.
Whereas the OC quite literally died young. What you say?
And we came up with nicknames for a lot of the entries in this bracketeering, and I didn't include them on the slides necessarily, but I really liked a lot of the ones we had. And for this one, it's longer run versus bigger name, and it really is true. The OC made such an enormous splash when it started that the fact that people probably mainly forget it was ever a show is really wild to think about.
Oh, yeah.
Now, Nico, you've already said this. Kevo, were you current with these when either of them was coming out?
Yes, with One Tree Hill. With the OC, I watched season 0.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't jump back after the baseball season. I just didn't remember or something. And then I started watching again in the middle of season 2. And from there, it was, So I watched both of these mostly simultaneously, mostly for their whole run.
So for
what
me,
is your experience?
I have 2 older sisters, one of whom is significantly older than I am. She's 13 years older than I am, and another one who's 3 years older than I am. And they were just cool. They were just cool girls, and they loved soaps. I tell you any soap, but like they love primetime soaps. They loved 90210, and I was significantly too young to be watching 90210 when it first started, but I also had relatively absentee parents, so I had been watching 90210 since its first season, and by the time One Tree Hill came out, I was really wanting for a teenage soap. And I was, when it started, I was I think I was just starting college, and I wanted to have this thing that could be like a touchstone for me of going into this new part of my life. And it was the same thing with the OC, but the OC felt so different because the OC felt like a meteor that had crashed into pop culture. And it wasn't like, here's a show. It was like, here's a new life for you children.
Oh, yeah. It was one of those pop culture moments where, like, it replaced vernacular.
Yeah.
That's always a thing where, like, when the term goes from one thing to another, when it stopped being Britney Spears, and I started hearing people say things like, oh, what, you're like Fifth Harmony or something, like to young women, like when they would say they want to sing, I was like, oh no,
you're out.
And I really agree with so much of this. It really did feel meteoric. Like it was inducted into the Television Hall of Fame within a month of its premiere. Like it was this wild thing. It's why so many things still use the term the OC for Orange County the way that they do.
Yep.
But at the same time, what it hit for by the end of the first season even is so dramatically different from what the show becomes.
Yeah.
Like the pilot is these kids having sex and doing blow and all of these adult racing things. And then by like the middle of the season, the slutty best friend suddenly reveals that she's a virgin and everything gets very tame. And I don't know what the decision was for that exactly, but I really do feel like that hugely contributed to its fall off. I mean, anything is going to have huge fall off no matter what. And I don't want to hear anyone say Oliver's name.
And I'm so glad Tori just said the OC somehow launched the Hills, because that was kind of going to be my follow-up to what Kevo said. For one thing, Tori, I hate to actually you on this one, but Laguna Beach launched the Hills, and the OC launched Laguna Beach. But that's the thing.
Sorry, Tori, your Hills ain't alive right now.
Laguna Beach really did, it picked up the slack of the OC, because the OC really did go too far into an innocuous territory, where you're exactly right, Kevin. It went real hard in the pilot, and I think that's what attracted everybody. And go ahead.
No, and I just want to point, of course, to the irony that always exists of the fact that Stephen Coletti, one of the people of Laguna Beach, ends up being on this show that, for all intents and purposes, the ways in which they are similar are bizarre and so unintentional in so many ways. The ways that One Tree Hill was supposed to be a movie before it was even a TV show in the first place. So,
but the thing about One Tree Hill is One Tree Hill gave the same, it fulfilled its promise at all times. Okay. It was a little bit, it was much more tame than the pilot of the OC, but it had, it had bad boy stuff. Like, people were drinking, the kids were drinking
throughout, and it didn't ever really,
it didn't waffle at all. And it promised a sort of, things for teens on the East Coast are different than things are for teens on the West Coast, even in affluent areas. And I would say, like, the presence of so much music, diegetic in One Tree Hill, and the fact that Peyton was like, kind of punk, but like pop punk, but like the fact that Fall Out Boy was such a character on the show to the point where Pete Wentz is a love interest, like, it pulled in a lot more its version of how teen life actually is. I was a really big show kid. All of my friends were in bands. I did a lot of that same stuff. Where the OC was like, in my wildest effing dreams, will I have the money to do this stuff, to live this life? And I think we all kind of liked gawking at that. And then Laguna Beach came around and was like, oh yeah, these are not my wildest dreams. This is just like a Sunday for me. So follow along. And, at the same time, One Tree Hill is just this steadfastly reflection of the teen experience.
And I think one of the things that kind of makes this such an interesting conversation is the OC and One Tree Hill. As you said, One Tree Hill fulfills its promise. One Tree Hill is sort of like somebody said, let's take Twin Peaks and take out the interesting. What are you left with? It creates its own new interesting.
Yeah.
I'm not saying One Tree Hill isn't interesting, but it's like they took all the magic out of One Tree Hill. They took all the magic out of Twin Peaks, and they left us with One Tree Hill, and then it built its own magic. They added in things like basketball. But the OC is about the complete opposite.
Yeah.
It's about a place that's so sensational. But, One Tree Hill is so generic as a town that it really is just about that Lil life, and that Lil life that you can live too if you're a Lil, and it's just a different. It's just a different world.
Yeah,
and stuff like Laguna Beach reminds us that it actually is a world, and it's not the every town. If there was a Laguna Beach of One Tree Hill, it would just be. I mean, I don't want to say 16 and pregnant, because no,
but a little bit though.
Yeah,
that's actually not far off. The thing about One Tree Hill is, like, I feel like like I said, I did a lot of the same stuff. I did sports, but I also did like a lot of, like, I was always at concerts. I was doing promotions. My friends were in bands. I drank a lot. I did a lot of drugs. I don't know that I felt like my life was so interesting that I could even pitch it. You know what I mean? Let alone make a reality show out of it. I really liked my life. I was very self-important, but I had friends who went to college with the kids from Laguna Beach, so they were the same age as I was, the same, like, they had a completely different life that somebody said, we can make something out of this worth watching, and they did. I just don't really think One Tree Hill reflects the experience of people who you wouldn't want to watch their reality show. You really need the sensationalism of TV drama to get you the rest of the way there.
So I have two things to say to that.
Yeah.
That means that the OC is the ER to One Tree Hill's Chicago Hope. That's number one.
Oh, God.
And number two, I want to add in, we haven't said the four most important words yet. Gavin DeGraw, Phantom Planet. You know,
It's Phantom Planet all the way. I mean, that's not even.
People always
Disagree as hard as possible.
That's so fucking weird, Nico. Why? Excuse my language.
Well, because number one,
Ooh,
that record by Gavin DeGraw
Yeah.
is as close as you can come to cool in a pork pie hat, and that is a banging ass song. And because you know what, it's one of those songs where like you only have to know the one part.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you can just kind of go and like you're fine.
Yeah.
The main thing I think about California by Phantom Planet is it is specifically devoid of the idea of the show. The show is not about California, here we come. The show is about
surviving that type of California, to be honest.
I think it's actually about a generation of people trying to survive the excess of culture bred by everybody wanting to live a celebrity life without being celebrity interesting. But One Tree Hill is literally a show about people who refuse to accept traditional roles and would rather be sad but together. Whereas I think many of the characters in the OC are really content living actually miserable, robotic lives devoid of love.
I really appreciate that you gave such a description and didn't say, like, I think it's a show about people who don't want to be anything other than what they've been trying to be lately. I also want to note that Gavin DeGraw toured on that song and that album as the opener for Maroon 5, and
for a decade.
Yeah, I mean, well, he toured on the song for a decade. Thankfully, he did not open for Maroon 5 for a decade, but that was a wild show and tour. He's a very good musician, and like I think the Phantom Planet song is better, but I think Gavin DeGraw as a musician showed more promise, and jokes on us because both of them kind of failed to do anything.
And I just want to point out, I loved Gavin DeGraw's album, but I do think that you could describe I Don't Want to Be as both his most well-known single and an album that is his greatest hit.
Yep, correct.
I like Jacob agreeing that he is a better magician than a musician.
Get that guy to break bills, I tells you.
I want to paraphrase this quote, this comment from Tori, where she talks about how she once ruined an indie boy's life when he played Phantom Planet, and she was like, "Oh, it's the theme song from the OC," and it wrecked him. Because I really feel like that does speak to me a lot about the difference between the music use on One Tree Hill versus the OC, and I feel like the OC is the reason that Glee became what it became, because the music of the OC and the music volumes of the OC were about selling music volumes of the OC, and it was about making that a product, much like the Glee soundtracks became. Whereas a lot of releasing the music on One Tree Hill was about trying to like release the literal breast cancer album that they spent season 3 building with songs from the actual artist that they had on the TV show. Or it's about an actual mix CD from season 4 when they go on a real road trip to an actual town. And like, I don't know if, especially with stuff that's been uncovered about Mark Schwann, if he had higher ambitions and if he wanted to be a little bit more of a moneymaker machine, or if that was part of his design. But you know, if we're talking about the products that came out and what they really stand for, it really does feel like a lot of the music from One Tree Hill and the production of it that came out was from a much more genuine place of being about storytelling. And the OC was a lot about more just making stuff to sell us. And I think that speaks to the difference in a lot of ways.
And I think another thing is like a lot of the musicians that were featured on OC sound or on One Tree Hill soundtracks did not blow up, and there was very much this vibe of like these are still kind of low key musicians that are. This is not their big break. This is like the cool kids that listen to indie music at your school would be listening to this or are listening to this. Like one of the best examples that always sticks out in my head is In the Rains by Iron and Wine and Calexico, which is a song and an album that I absolutely love, but like I know that most people don't know, even though Iron and Wine has had a few hits. And it also has this really insane part of the song where they just get a guest vocalist who is a Spanish musician to come in this really deep baritone belt this like Spanish part of the song, and it has nothing to do with the rest of the song or the album, and it just is so weird. I can't believe it was featured on the show, where it feels like the OC would never allow such an odd song to break the aesthetic of just like Coachella cool.
Mouse. Yeah.
So
if it doesn't sound like Emmy or Modest Mouse, we don't want it.
Yeah.
I do want to add that we can't leave out that the One Tree Hill soundtracks actually included One Tree Hill songs.
Yes.
I mean,
Bethany Joy Lenz.
There's literally contributed songs. But I think we do have to vote at some point.
We do actually have to vote.
It's about these two, and I love it. But we got 100 more to get through.
We do have 100. So, you're correct about that number.
I'm gonna put out there. I think we got to give it. I got to give it to the One Tree Hill. I think the reality is the OC did a lot of really cool things very quickly, but One Tree Hill managed to do something that's very difficult, and that's longevity. That's several years on 2 different networks. That's survive a cast divorce. That's survive the transition out of 2 of your characters when, Marissa leaves the OC. The whole show just sort of shuts down shortly thereafter.
It's real rough from then and on. Even if you like what's her name,
she's my favorite.
Love what's her name.
Yeah, she really what's her whole name? Autumn Reeser, right?
Autumn Reeser playing
Taylor Townsend.
Taylor Townsend. Thank you, Kevy.
Who's the vampire mom in Twilight? Never mind. I thought somebody would have that off the top of their head. Their names are really similar, and it might be Autumn Reese.
Yeah.
And I always get the 2 confused. Anyway,
like that.
So Nico gave it. You're giving it to One Tree Hill.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Kevin, what you got?
Do you have yours?
Yeah.
Do you want to go?
I'll go. I think I got to give it to One Tree Hill too. And I even will say I know that Kevo especially appreciates the later seasons a ton more than I do, and it is to the point that I would say the splash and impact of that first season of the OC is so big, and I so dislike the post-high school drop-off for One Tree Hill that they are actually relatively close for me, but I do think that on balance, One Tree Hill just does the thing all the way through, and the OC really is not sustaining past Hallelujah in that last episode of the first season, with the exception to Misha Barton making out with Olivia Wilde to Say Goodnight and Go by Imogen Heap.
There's a lot of really
very different takes on the OC.
There's a lot of really sweet things in the OC. I will forever have a very soft spot for it in my heart, and that's even specifically why I chose to put the DVD covers up, because watching these on a loop is what got me through writing papers in college.
Respect.
To the point where I even made sure to write my last paper watching season 4. I even told Nico about it at the time. It was, it is what it was.
Yep.
It is what it is.
It is what it is. It was what it was.
Even if you just want to go pound for pound, One Tree Hill just trounces it.
I think you're right.
I love you, Benzie's arms, but I guess Chad Michaels' nipples went out.
Well, because you can't find James Lafferty's.
No, where are they? I don't even know.
For anybody who did love One Tree Hill as much as we seem to, please be aware that Hillary Burton, Bethany Joy Lenz, and Sophia Bush are currently doing a rewatch podcast.
No, they're not. There's only one podcast, and it's ours, and so that one doesn't exist.
If you are like me and listen to approximately 60 hours of podcasts a day, so maybe have room for 2,
And want to support women.
What is
if
it
you
called?
Want to support women? Please listen to these 3 brilliant actors dance around the fact that they fucking hate Chad Michael Murray.
They have lovely things to say when there's context.
From One Tree Hill to 30 Rock and Studio 60, this was like
Terrible
one of those.
transition.
This is fuck. I don't care. So this is one of those things where we have an impossible thing to compare because there is no way in which 30 Rock can lose this, and
But
I'm willing to.
What if we say like the first season? What if just for a thought experiment?
No, then it still has to go to 30 Rock.
Okay,
the worst
cool. Then
season
let's
of
go.
30 Rock can fight the best season of Studio 60. Oh, right. There's only that one iffy one. So, okay. When
Hitting the hype. Yep.
hitting the hype. 30 Rock came out and was one of the lowest rated shows in NBC debut history at an incredible cost. It debuted October of 2006, and it ran ultimately 7 seasons, 139 episodes through through January of 2013. In July of 2020, Kevy, is that the reunion Pando special?
Yes, it is.
And
It was
that
a
ran
very
on
thoughtful thing to do.
and that ran on NBC. And then over there on the other side, well, and I think Aaron Sorkin wrote some women really well. Like CJ Craig is a pretty phenomenal lady. But Studio 60 had, okay, I was recently, and please, guys, please, I promise, I'll keep it down to 2 of these. Can I just have 2 of them?
What do you got, Bella?
Maybe. What?
Okay. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it is that Roxette. Hold on. Take a step back. I like to sit at my keyboard and write my own arrangements of pop songs that I like. I really enjoy arranging music, and I really enjoy singing songs by brilliant songwriters and feeling the magic of their words. And it's very Scorpions, Winds of Change. And I was sitting at my keyboard the other day, and I was like, I want to learn some Roxette. So I decided to learn the look, or as I'm going to call it from now on, the Hammer song, because it is clear that Roxette perhaps did not write their songs in English and translated them from Dansk. I'm not sure where they're from, but the songs are beautiful and they're brilliant and I love them. And there's just some places where looking like a hammer, walking like a man, like it's just a little unusual.
Doing all the things that a hammer can.
And it's one of those things where like she's got the look part really sticks in your head. Right? You remember that. You remember that it must have been love, but you never think about lay a whisper on my pillow, leave the winter on the ground. Like,
that's incorrect. I think about those all the time. I also think about fading like a flower. I mean, like, come on. But setting all that aside, where are we? Let's get
where's
there.
Roxette?
I think about a lot of the best moments of Studio 60, and it's these perfect moments that if you get them, they're amazing. It's the beat of Sarah Paulson giving the most. God, that woman can like literally do anything. She could literally read me the ingredients on the back of a bottle of Wipeout. Whiteout. And I would be like, ma'am, I don't know why you don't have 10 more Emmys. What's happening? Who hates you that you don't have Emmys for this? So she gives that delivery of, you rock my socks. And it's like the greatest 10 seconds in television history. Sting does that breathtaking Fields of Gold. There's the incredible Disaster Show where Allison Janney and Timothy Busfield, I think, give a tour de force performance in how to work a set and a story, and it's devoid of all of the major actors. And so many moments of Studio 60 are pitch perfect, like a Roxette song. But the minute you listen to the other lyrics, you are leaving the winter on the hammer, my friend.
Okay, that was pretty worth it for the point that you made. Okay, yes, the inconsistencies are really bad. They are really problematic for the show. I agree. Like there are some amazing moments, and like the good moments, the not amazing but good moments are really good. The entire setup, the idea that they get these 2 guys back, these two producers, a producer and a writer for this SNL-esque show, who spun off on their own to go make movies, which is like the most plausible thing that's ever happened. We know so many people, Fallon, Seth Meyers, John Mulaney, all of the Lonely Islands. These are all people that worked behind the scenes and sometimes in front of the camera for SNL. And none of the people that I just mentioned left on like bad terms, but they all left to go do other things. And so that's what we have with Matthew Perry and Bradley Whitford. And they get brought back because the show is failing, and they kind of get hoodwinked into it. There's a issue where they kind of have to do it, and that setup is really brilliant. Them coming back, all the fact that they have so much history, and you can sense that history even when it's unspoken, that you know that these people had years and days together in those years that like they can fall back on in memory. Everybody's killing it in that. And just to use an example of one thing that is pervasive and really bad, there is not a funny sketch shown in the show. There's not a single...
No, one funny sketch.
Okay.
There's one funny sketch.
Okay.
Don't agree.
I think the funny sketch, first of all, in my other life, I'm a huge faggot for opera.
Your other life being like as soon as you get off this camera?
Yeah, like in the afternoons.
I mean the keyboard like right below the camera.
Yeah.
So I love the Gilbert and Sullivan model of a modern network TV show because of how unfunny it is.
But that's a different thing. That could have been fine. If that existed with like 4 other genuinely funny sketches written by a sketch comedy writer who, I mean, like, pay a kid from SNL, whatever. That was, I think, overwrought in a Sorkinian way. Way.
There's something really major news is coming in. I don't know if you all saw, but Tori agrees with me. Tori says, I forgot the sketch and Nico is right. It was major news.
I don't disagree that it is a great sketch. It's a great Sorkin moment. You know how much Sorkin likes Gilbert and Sullivan. It's kind of plausible for this duo to want to do that. I don't necessarily buy how enthusiastic about it D.L. Hughley is, but let's break stereotypes here. The problem is
D.L. Hughley is so goddamn attractive. He can do anything he wants, and no one should tell him.
He's very beautiful. There's no funny sketches. I think it's because Sorkin refuses to let anybody else write, and so wouldn't hire a sketch comedy writer, and maybe thought he was that funny. I don't know.
Or someone funny.
See, I thought Nico was referring to a sketch that I know he at one time thought was the height of comedy. And that's the problem with knowing someone for 16 years is things change. And I guess you're no longer a huge fan of Spit Take Theater. No.
Oh, Spit Take Theater. No, I didn't. I love Spit Take Theater. I didn't remember what else you were saying. I'm sorry. I feel uncomfortable when somebody's like, I know something I'm going to bring up about you, and I'm just sitting here going, I have no idea what's about to happen on air. I'm terrified. So,
Spit Take Theater is a good example of what I think is the most realistic sketch.
Very SNL. Totally.
The thing is, that sketch on SNL would have been funny because everybody was breaking.
Yes, and we would have known them. It wouldn't have been these actors who are playing these other characters that we're supposed to pretend are these beloved comedians.
Right.
It would never happen post-COVID.
You said that a lot.
Very, very true. Will never happen again. And I want to throw out there that most of the sketches on 30 Rock are also not that funny. But
they know that. They're not trying to be.
Yeah, they're not trying to be, and they're written by sketch comedy people, so they feel correct.
Yes.
2, they choose to be absurd rather than funny as part of like a thing that this show isn't good. And 3, some of them actually are funny. Yeah. And so you believe that, like, okay, this is the show that they work on. It's just so hard to believe that these people worked on this show. And then the show starts to be like, while we do work on this show, somehow this show's existence is very important to the war in Iraq and Iran.
Oh, yeah. But no, 30 Rock did the same thing.
Very differently.
Very differently.
But they also did. This network is
that is
suddenly
funny.
deeply involved in like major Middle Eastern conflicts.
Yeah. Oh, God.
Hold on.
I do wonder how many things later in 30 Rock are poking fun at Studio 60. I mean,
True.
Aaron Sorkin literally appears to poke fun at Studio 60.
And,
For
and
sure.
does he and specifically makes reference women a gender I write very well.
So I do want to point out, though, that we haven't brought up the most important thing that ever happened in 30 Rock. Yes, you can, of course, point to MILF Island. One
You're
of the
about to say
funniest
Cheyenne Jackson,
hours.
aren't you?
No, but Cheyenne Jackson. Hey, call me.
Yeah, hey.
You're gonna have to
he's
fight
all
Brian
good for you.
Cox, Cheyenne. Just be careful.
I'm ready for the fight.
Oh yeah.
But I want to remind everybody that the Irma Lerman Merman murder turned the bird's world lurid, the whir and the purr of a twirler girl. She would the world, were demure, and beyond the shores allure and Kai whir. I want to just say that one of the things that 30 Rock has going for it that Studio 60 can't have ever had is we look back on years of growing jokes and the strength of those growing jokes. And, when you think about it, the greatest period of physical growth in a human being's life is like, conception to like, week 9, where there's so much growth, but that's not the same thing for a TV show. A human being in a TV show is not the same parallel. A TV show needs a couple of years to find its stride sometimes, and like it still runs. But think about how your favorite season of a show might not be till season 5. Studio 60, died before it ever got a chance to be good. And I'm also going to say 30 Rock lived several years past funny.
Yep.
30 Rock was my favorite show. When it started, my family all still lived at home. And my dad and sister used to just come and watch me laugh because I would laugh so hard it would make them happy to watch.
Yep.
Just because anybody would laugh that hard is awesome to see.
Yep.
And by the end of 30 Rock, I would literally say like that episode didn't have one joke that made me crack a smile. It
Yep.
was very upsetting by the end.
Yeah, I think the last 2 seasons for sure were superfluous, and I think had the 5th season had they known that the 5th season was the last season, I don't think the 5th season is great, but I think had it been the last, with the energy, because the 6 and 7 do have some funny moments. There are some good episodes.
Jenna flying is great.
Yes. And I think had season 5 had all the energy and all the need to get out the best stuff because we're not getting any more, you would have had 5 fantastic seasons.
Yeah, I get that. I have a lot more affection for the later seasons. I would call it past its prime more than unfunny, but past its prime is still not a compliment.
No.
And still not something that you want to continue to drag out. Yeah, something I noticed as I'm looking at these, I'd never even saw them back to back and never thought about the fact that it's 30 Rock and Studio 60.
Studio 60.
He literally
Yeah.
made it double 30.
Yeah.
Ooh.
She originally had a different name. It had a different studio number attached to it. Studio 60 was the most expensive pilot purchase in history. And
Because of Sorkin.
and it had a different name attached originally, and it was forced to change what studio it was because the actual studio it was referencing was like, nah, and they just went with Studio 60.
And I'll say the one thing I always wondered about, it's Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip. It takes place in Los Angeles. It is not a New York-based show. And I've always kind of wondered if there was a message of like, in Los Angeles, we are not funny. And that's why this is bad.
It's sort of like where Tori says that in one of her comments, she thinks that Sorkin might have written it to like shit on Chenoweth.
Yeah. Well, we know that.
I actually have to disagree. If you ask me, I think in his Aaron Sorkin mind, I think he thinks this is a love song to her. She's the funniest, the most competent. She's the one that they all turn to for advice. The only things she's bad at are being like a day-to-day human. That's something he thinks makes you a great president, a great vice president, a great secretary of state, a great speechwriter, a great body man. So he thinks that's the trait, my friend. He thinks that's the trait. So I think he thinks that he wrote a love song to her. And if you read her book, I think she, in her own ambient tweets way, would agree at a high A flat.
And I did get us locked in with 30 Rock because we knew it was going to be that. And I am trying to move us forward because, man, we could talk about all of these forever. But I'm glad that we ended on that particular note because, to me, one of the things that was best about Studio 60 was the fact that we got that look into the interiority of those two people's lives. And I think it raised Kristen Chenoweth's star even more at a time where she was really starting to be on the rise. And it certainly was a thing that made me even more aware of her. And, I just coming off of seeing her in Wicked. And then, you had shows like Pushing Daisies. And that really, to me, was a moment for her. And so even though it was Studio 60, she's not even on it. Sarah Paulson as an ode to Kristen Chenoweth and what that did for Kristen Chenoweth going forward was great.
And speaking of Kristen Chenoweth, if you ask me, Sofia Vergara is the Colombian Kristen Chenoweth because both of their lips are like animatronically present and
loud, animated, colorful dressers.
They sometimes perform in a way that's hard to understand, and I think at that same extension, Dwight Schrute sucks. So this one's not hard for me. When I first got into The Office, it was like super everything to me. Yeah, home doc versus work doc being Office, home doc being Modern Family. I understand that culturally speaking, these are two pretty comparable shows. 9 seasons at 201 versus 11 at 250, 2005 to 213, 2009 to 2020, ABC versus NBC. I'm going to say by season 4, I could no longer do The Office. It wasn't one of those, oh, it's so awkward, it's funny. I just kept thinking, I hate these people. Like, literally, they make me ill to watch. Like, I think they are such disgusting people. I cannot get through this. I cannot do this. And the whole world liked it more and more, and the numbers went up. And I was in the minority, and then they tried to steal me back with James Spader and Catherine Tate, and I held fast and said no.
Which was smart. I am the reverse. After season 4, I could no longer do Modern Family. I really hated these people. Most especially, I really did hate Cam and Mitch, and I was just bored. I was just so bored. And, the other part of it is I do not have a comparable relationship with anybody in my family. My family doesn't do anything like this. There's very little closeness outside of the extended family. There is not just walking into each other's houses. And so I just really couldn't relate where I sort of could relate to the mundanity of office culture and how dumb it was and how funny it would be if anything interesting happened, or if you could, kind of make believe that stuff that wasn't interesting was interesting. I will say, having met you two and having been forced would be a strong word, but lovingly compelled to watch significantly more Modern Family than I had intended to after I dropped off at the end of season 4. There is a ton that is redeeming about it, and that is different than what I was perceiving. That is very subtly funny, where The Office, as I continue to watch it, I will always love it. There are things that are really, really good, I think, all the way through, but that first watch of when it was coming out and we were all kids, I wasn't a kid, I was still an adult, but I was a kid by comparison to now. All of the fire of that first season, of that first watch through, it diminishes in subsequent watch throughs. And I really do think Modern Family actually has so much solid, subtle humor that it benefits from multiple rewatchings. And, because it's a sitcom, you'll do a lot of those not even paying attention watching. But if you just stop and pay attention to like a specific scene each time, you get something new and funny out of it.
And I don't just think it benefits from multiple watching. I think it, in some ways, it requires a understanding of who the characters are and will always be, for better and for worse, because I can't disagree with you. Where you fell off, there were huge periods where we were like, these guys suck. It's
Yeah.
so upsetting that this is the most visible queer couple on television,
Yep.
and it feels like they hate each other sometimes. And we felt that way about different characters at different times, and I think being able to experience it more as a whole entity and knowing no one's going anywhere, they're always going to be close in different ways, and everyone's going to have their own relationships, and it provides a new perspective on it that we keep finding new layers every time we watch, where we see moments as early as season 1 where we're like, oh my god, that was so progressive of Jay. At first there's a situation where Mitch ends up in a dress through accident, and he makes a couple of light jokes, but then he sort of is like, no, you've got a decent body for it. If that's the kind of gay you were, you wouldn't look bad. And so you really, early on, you're like, oh, he's just being crappy. But then by the end, you're like, no, that really is Jay, and you're going to see him grow. And I really don't feel like a show like The Office is as much about growth. And that's okay. It's a lot more about jokes. I can, even in some ways, like, trace back to where I fell off. And it became just weird in a way that I'm stammering over my words. It was literally when I believe Dwight cuts his penis on the can of a soda can.
Oh yeah,
that joke. And I watched for a little while after that still, but by the end of that season, that moment, I was like, no, this show is just I too uncomfortable. And it's about screaming and making you feel weird, and that can be okay sometimes, but there isn't really enough balance to it. And Modern Family at least has, for as saccharine as it can be, sweet moments that help you relax about when it makes you feel uncomfortable.
One thing I find really amusing is The Office really does feel like there is absolutely no need to understand why this is documentary style. Like, it's so absurd and so impossible that the idea that you would ever need an explanation or like reference to the crew specifically, to me, almost makes it's almost better. It's definitely better if you never know, but I think it almost makes sense if it just absurdly is being done documentary style. Where Modern Family, I was actually really expecting them to have the moment that The Office has, where it is explained specifically what the documentary is, when it will air, what happens after it's done, what's going on with the crew. And it's totally the opposite. And, I think in some ways, to me, that just sort of speaks to where both shows decided they were going to go, like about midway through until you got to the end.
Mm-hmm. And the other central idea that binds Modern Family is that at the end of the day, these people are a family, and no one could leave the show.
Yeah.
The kids could go away to college, but they had to come back. With The Office, the main guy, the guy whose career it made, leaves. And if they weren't careful, other people were going to leave.
Yeah.
And it is a really significant understanding that The Office was never about family. And, I see Jacob has put in the chat that he thinks WandaVision does like a knock on Modern Family. The only thing is, I don't think it's a knock that Modern Family doesn't do on Modern Family.
I don't think he means knock like they're poking at it. I think he means like it's
a take.
Literally they do a funny setup of it, which they absolutely did. And I remember in the preview, you get like one frame of Wanda talking to the camera, and immediately that was Modern Family.
And it's those pillows,
where like they didn't do The Office, but it really created both shows really created beautiful documentary aesthetics that I find very impressive.
The thing that I think keeps in my heart a special place for The Office that Modern Family can't have is, and I'm still going to Modern Family, but when I first got into The Office and like it came out on DVD and I could grab it at Walmart and I was so excited and I brought it home and I was showing it to my then boyfriend and I was like, look, I understand you don't want to watch this, but please watch this with me. I've watched it on my own and I watched it with my sister and I just really want you to watch it. And he watched it and fell in love.
Oh.
Thought it was like, it wasn't that, oh, this guy and I share this now. It was that there was this sense of like, if you watched it during season 1 or season 2, you were in it and you wanted this show to succeed. It's like Archer. They used to have to like do like save our show things, and now it's just Archer and it's going to run as long as Family Guy runs, you know?
Mm.
And Modern Family was always in the top 10 comedies in the world produced by the United States.
Yeah.
And it never was the cool thing to like. It was, oh, you watch Modern Family, okay, you're either a Disney person or a homo. And
you were both.
I was a Disney homo. So even though I'm giving my vote to Modern Family, I just want to say for all the knocks that I gave, oh, see, because that's how I use knocks. I just realized that I did that. That's why I thought that.
And I'm just talking about the band The Knocks.
Yeah, and I'm just talking about the Knocks, like the rap crew that used to be running on Bad Boy Entertainment. Right. So yeah,
I know Modern Family is winning this one. My vote is, of course, for The Office.
I really have to echo Nico's sentiments, though, of wanting to give a shout out to the specialness of that period that The Office came out, and that era of getting the DVD and showing it to someone, and you know, you kind of did know you were on the ground floor of something that was going to be a juggernaut by season 2, and you didn't know what was going to happen, that it was going to go off the rails. But like that week in particular, and I want to do another video or episode at some point talking about the fact that that is the same week that saw the debut of Grey's Anatomy and the debut of the Doctor Who revival. And that was just such a weird period of pop culture and entertainment before streaming, before really any huge internet interaction was so mainstream. And it's wild the ways that those things still influence pop culture to this day.
We gym the camera.
The camera.
You're absolutely right. That technically Facebook did exist, but we did not do the same stuff on social media. That was the sort of gray transition between Web 1.0 and Web 2.0. The interaction was just totally different. But I was a media studies student at the time, and it really was like watching these behemoths get born, and you actually knew they were going to be that big. I don't think anybody could have predicted that Grey's Anatomy was going to go into its 20th season, but you saw that something crazy was happening. And like the OC is kind of the opposite thing, where we saw it was happening and we assumed it was going to be huge forever and it was going to be the next 90210, and then it sort of fizzled out. But
didn't even reach 100.
It really was a fascinating time. And yeah, I mean, I really appreciate you guys like kind of giving the office its due in that regard, because it was pretty special. And, I know my friend Jess Rosario is not watching this right now, but if she were, I would say that I distinctly remember, getting a digital copy of the finale of season 2 through totally legal means, and bringing it, hopping a flight from New York, getting a plane back to Maine, not specifically to do this, but, I knew I was coming back, and I got The Office for us to watch together. And I just remember that moment of the second season finale and just really rooting for Pam and Jim. So, Modern Family, I really am enjoying this, lovingly compelled rewatch that I'm doing of you.
All right, now last similar show that did not have a major franchise, because our other side is major franchises, Brooklyn Nine-Nine versus Superstore. And I at first was like, I don't think I can compare these two. I don't think they're comparable in any way. It actually just turns out that we started watching Brooklyn Nine-Nine like the 3rd episode, and we started watching Superstore during like the 4th season. So we had a bit of time between them. But to take a look at those two shows, they actually ran really similar times. Brooklyn Nine-Nine ran September 2013 to September 2021. It was 8 seasons with 153 episodes on Fox and NBC, where Superstore ran from November of 2015 to March of 2021, a lot closer than I ever would have thought. It ran 6 seasons and 113 episodes, all on NBC. And okay, it's tough because I probably relate to Jake Peralta more than almost any other fictional character. It's like Winnie the Pooh and Jake Peralta. If you squish them together,
I really did not think about if you combine those two. That really is you.
Yeah, and also throw in a little bit of the Madonna sex book. But I am really these two people, and I am nobody that much on Superstore. Okay, rewind. We have some ACAB problems. And so the subject matter of Brooklyn Nine-Nine is always compromised. But I do not believe anybody ever meant to be hyper exploitative of, because when you work in retail, like Superstore, you are kind of like, hey, that's me too. But it's just that person isn't writing it from working in Walmart. They're writing it from $140,000 a year writer's room job.
You have to, with Brooklyn Nine-Nine, inherently and from the start, and always acknowledge that it is a police fantasy in a way that is very different from Parks and Recreation, which has a lot more well represented, even in its absurdity. The obstruction and all those sorts of things, even within the very direct office of Parks and Recreation. But like so much of the main cast are such stellar and stalwart cops in a way in which just not everyone is that competent at their job in such a way. And it is a fantasy, and you have to know that, whereas Superstore is a lot more realistically representative of what you might see from a full roster of loonies working at a retail store. And trust me, I've worked at my own. It's very well depicted.
And Brooklyn Nine-Nine started at a time where pop culture was much less willing to acknowledge the problem with the police as we know them. That is not to say that people weren't aware of it. That's not to say that people were not shouting it from the hills, but there was a lot less interest in listening and in having discourse and in seeing that discourse in the large public eye. And at the same time, it went on so long that it phased into the period where we started talking about it a lot. And I believe it's something that's been said before about the show, but it really becomes about using this position to critique the police by way of saying, like, to live in a world where, people's hearts were good, and to point out the comedy that comes by showing flaws in the system that are real, and, the absurdity of watching what these characters do in that sort of speaks to problems with the fact that in real life these situations can arise. And of course, you will never lose the criticism of, like, it is making money, making light of the real situation that the police state is bad and wrong, and there will never be a way to do that with a true heart. I think the thing about living in a capitalist hellscape is you really do take the small victories where you can get them. And if there is somebody who sort of went from just watching this show and laughing to sort of understanding through the show why our police system is wrong, that's a victory. That's one dude. And, I'll take whatever little victories we can get these days.
Absolutely.
I want to add on a very personal note that not only do I really identify with Jake Peralta, but I think Amy Santiago is the most perfect woman of all time. And I had the pleasure of seeing Match Game filmed, and Melissa Fumero was there. and I could barely control my little boy crush, and I just think she's the best, and I love this show. And by the end of the show, not too spoilery, but a number of characters have either moved on from the force or are working actively within or outside the force toward police reform.
Yeah.
So it is definitely a show that takes its progress seriously, whereas Superstore was always really fond of betraying the quality of a character's person for a joke. And it was really painful watching the other Amy Sosa, over on Superstore, tragically fall apart. But I need to say something really funny about that. I think that the single greatest version of the Dwight Schrute character ever is Dina from Superstore, who is, I think, one of the, I don't know, she's just one of my favorite sitcom characters ever. It's actually really hard to go with Brooklyn, because Kevin will tell you, my love for Dina was strange. She's my favorite, and she's the Dwight, but there's something about the fact that she's a woman who's not afraid of the fact that she's a woman. She just doesn't want to be girly, and she's not here to apologize for the fact that she's a woman, because she's going to have her breasts when she wants them. There was just something
she's
so
in
commanding.
the Dwight role, but she's not the Dwight.
Yeah.
She's in the Dwight role, but then the character is so different in a way that is palatable in a good way, not Dwight's unpalatability is challenging us and making the comedy funnier. There's a lot of times where Dwight's just kind of gross, and it stops being funny after the second season. And I think that happens a lot in Superstore, where because it comes after The Office, they really manage to take a bunch of the ideas and the tropes of the workplace sitcom, the single camera workplace sitcom that really is there to say, we've all been there. We've all been in retail. We've all been in an office job. We know what the deal is. And kind of not improving the formula, but just by virtue of having an older sibling, not making a lot of the same mistakes. And because of that, in a lot of ways getting to be a cleaner version of the show.
I think that making it something that is a lot more frontline by having it be the direct retail experience of working in a store is also something that helped Superstore and made it a lot more relatable and palatable. I think the Office comparison is really apt, and you can see it through so many characters, but the politics of a situation like this, while still there very frequently in terms of shift manager and employee of the month, some people care, but it's so much significantly less competitive in a way that I think it does make it a lot more relatable and a lot more serviceable to a wider audience as well. Anyone could end up in this retail job. So you have characters like Jonah, who dropped out of business school, and you have characters like Amy, who unfortunately right out of high school pretty much started working there. It's a lot of diversity across there, whereas everyone working in Dunder Mifflin didn't come there by the same exact means, but there aren't a lot of avenues to I work in an office in a paper company the same way as I work at Walmart.
That's a great point. And it's not really about that. And it's funny because sometimes they actually try and make it about that because it makes the characters more interesting, but they really clearly get scared. Pam giving up on graphic design rather than them figuring out a way for Pam to be a graphic designer that still needs to interact with Dunder Mifflin, which isn't hard, guys. Really is
it was
just
a choice, clearly.
Yeah, it's really just guess we're stuck here forever. And so they all could have interesting backgrounds, and it could be, how do you end up here, when you're so different? But it really just becomes we're all just here. And yeah, that is totally different about Superstore. That's a very interesting point. I didn't think about that.
Hey, Kevy.
Yeah.
I have to ask, are you scared?
Oh my God. Yeah, no,
You're prettier than my sister. Wait, no, that's not the joke. Wait, I'm sorry.
No,
I'm sorry, my sister.
You're so cute.
There's a particularly ridiculous character who has exact personal autobiographical memory, but she also winds up in a position to be a pathological liar for a season, and her lies become more and more glorious. I do have to give it to Brooklyn Nine-Nine here. Brooklyn Nine-Nine a little bit tells my story as like a guy who wanted to be a better person more, and that's the Jake Peralta journey from fool who thought that by getting his childhood dream job would be happy, coming to realize that none of that is true, and he wants to be a stay-at-home dad and wants to live a different life. Not that I'm stay-at-home dad, but Superstore is about a bunch of selfish people that are stuck together until they decide they're a family at the end in one episode. So I like it a lot. It's very funny, but Brooklyn.
I think much like we wanted to make sure that The Office got its due when stacked up against Modern Family, the way Brooklyn, would I say, is comparable to Modern Family. Yeah, no, I love Superstore, but it's got to go to... much like it went to my fantasy of a good family, it's going to my fantasy of good cops.
My vote is kind of for Brooklyn because I've seen more. I suspect that if I had the kind of relationship with Superstore that I do with a bunch of other shows on this list, it might go to that. But and also, God, do I love all of the characters and actors in Brooklyn Nine-Nine. So anyway, I was outvoted either way, but I'm going with it.
For a second, I was like, he's either lost in thought or he's frozen. Gosh, 1 or 30? 1 or 30? 30. 30 for me. It's a dirty 30. It's a dirty 30 up in here.
Did you both vote 30?
I say 30, yeah.
All right, then I'm definitely going to vote One Tree Hill as a protest vote.
Okay. All right.
Well, Peyton would be proud.
Exactly. People always leave.
I just want you to know that I'm going to be your friend forever, and I'm going to date most of the guys you date, and I love you.
Ooh, Frel. Okay.
I'll tell you right off the bat, it's Modern Family for me.
Yeah, it's Modern Family for me. Yeah, Modern Family.
Kevo?
I'm thinking.
Cool.
Take
your time. I just want to make sure. I don't like to click it.
I'm not frozen, yeah.
No.
Yeah. So I'm going to talk while you're thinking. But I think that, this is one of those things where you got to go with one or the other, and there's just more magic in Modern Family in a lot of ways.
It's also for me this is like my two avenues of problematic life are like too heteronormative of a family structure being highlighted as the good thing, and cops being highlighted as the good thing. And it's very funny how if you dig deep, it's neither show is saying the thing that it is definitely saying on the surface.
Well, I mean, I think we got 2 for Modern Family, so Kevo, it's not so much a tiebreaker.
No, I know, but I'm thinking about what my actual answer would be. I guess I would say Mod Fan. It's just Andy Samberg is so hot.
Oh, so hot and funny.
And married to Joanna Newsom. I like to think that he is a stay-at-home dad to their children.
That's lovely. I'm going to go with Modern Family again. I like 30 Rock a lot, but the dollar value of jokes across the seasons, dividing it out 7 by 11, figuring it out. For me, Modern Family is just kind of the breakaway. Modern Family goes into special list of like Golden Girls, Frasier, Modern Family.
It's 30 Rock for me so that Kevo can break a tie, but 30 Rock, just a foundational television show for me. So many great writers and so much comedy that withstood the test of time, even though kind of everybody except for good old Jenna Maroney turned out to be a little bit of a garbage person. And she probably is too, and I just don't know about it yet.
Jack McBrayer's not bad.
That's true.
So, Kevin, what's it going to be?
I'm also going to go with Mod Fam. I think most especially because I think Modern Family is a show that goes through a lot more evolution and a lot more diverse periods and eras. And I think 30 Rock less so.
The big bummer for me here is I know that you are actively watching some of the best episodes and seasons of 30 Rock right now because you're showing them to Jonah. So I don't even have the defense of being like, he's just remembering the bad stuff. He doesn't know.
Where we're at in our Modern Family nighttime rewatch is it's the less great era of Modern Family too, in some ways.
You're still
So
here. All right.
There's double of Modern Family, so it just has more weight to be able to balance
I
out.
hear that, but I actually just think that there is still more good across all of the Modern Family because there's more across a lot of the 30 Rock.
So before we get into the Foxiverse, do you want to take a little break or you just want to pile through?
Let's pile on through.
All right. Okay.
We have on our right side is franchises, and we've actually already talked about a lot of these franchises in one way or another at some point on our many shows.
We may have talked about the X franchise in some capacity once or twice on this network.
I'll be honest with you, I disliked The Gifted so much that I never sat down to watch all of season 2. It did nothing for me. My X-Men love each other even when times are hard. And I felt like The Gifted was about people who were forced to be in the same room against their will. Legion was perfect. Perfect. Heartbreaking, gut-wrenching. Dan Stevens, I love you. Legion is perfect. Legion is perfect. The shows. 2017 to 2019, 2 seasons, 29 episodes, Fox. 2017 to 2019, 3 seasons, 27 episodes, FX. Wow, that's so close.
This is tough for me. I do not feel that Legion is, that Gifted is as bad as you do. I really enjoyed it. I thought what they managed to pull together was really interesting. Interesting's the wrong word. It was engaging, and the story really moved all the way through.
Polaris was fantastic every single minute of every episode.
Polaris was,
and I also loved what's his name, the male lead, Stephen
Eclipse, it's not a real. They made up the dude.
Hawkeye, but I loved him too. No, I mean the one from True Blood.
Bill, Vampire Bill. Vampire Bill is so good as one of the non-incestuous Struckers. Super bonkers that they went with the Struckers, that they went with both the Nazi incest Struckers, but they are temporally at the correct point. So they are actually World War II era incest Nazis. And then they give birth to these, Stephen Moyer. They give birth to Vampire Bill, and he gives birth to like a redux of brother and sister who are non-incestuous. Though, are they giving each other the look from time to time? It kind of feels that way, doesn't it? Go ahead,
especially stacking that up against Legion, which did so many weird things.
Yeah.
I have to assume The Gifted went nowhere near how strange anything what you described is.
No.
And that really speaks to like some of the odd choices they made, and
it's things too like putting Reva Page in the mix and making her one of the big bads. Their exploration of how people might be with certain powers, it did good character work. And at times I felt Legion got so caught up in the smell of its own farts that like it forgot to actually do the interesting, relatable character work and just kind of always went so cerebral that it kind of just like you can't touch it.
So the source material.
But what source material though? Because
Legion as a character.
Not Spurrier's.
Legion as a character is so inaccessible. That's one of the things that makes him accessible. When you find that thing that makes you interact with David Haller, it's that thing for you, and it's that one of his Legion that you connect with.
But that
I really feel like
television.
What was that, Kevin?
Yeah. But that makes for hard television.
It does make for hard television. I really think that they did not benefit by so stalwartly ignoring Spurrier's work. And I think the fact that we are in a current Legion Spurrier renaissance sort of further proves that. I think not having a version of Blindfold in the mix was not just disappointing, but also like I just never really bought any of his romantic relationships. Man, I you know what? I am going to be contrarian and I'm going to give it to The Gifted.
I'm gonna give it to Legion, but I really respect that you've got a vibe that you dig.
Yeah. And, you know, I think it's funny to make Kevo have to break a tie, so here we are.
It's Legion. I'm sorry.
don't
I
apologize.
really also loved the things that I loved from The Gifted. I loved Paul Aris, who when we were at New York Comic-Con, in between these two seasons, I believe, or maybe it was at the start of The Gifted, it was after she had done Bunheads, and they walked past our table, and I called out, "I loved you on Bunheads," and she was happy about that, and I loved that, and you know.
For one thing, always the best thing you can do if you are like at, for instance, a con and you see an actor who is obviously there for, you know, a particular thing related to the con, telling them you loved them in something not related to it is always going to make them feel so good, because no matter what, it means that they are not just here for being part of the thing. You know, whatever that may be, and that's something I always, if I see somebody who is known for one thing but I know them from something else, I really try and always say that, because it makes people feel good.
I really want to thank Sarah Michelle Gellar for her work on The Crazy Ones, which was a sitcom for one season on CBS with Robin Williams as her dad, and she is so funny.
It's really good.
And you know, obviously this whole row adores Buffy, but you know, exactly your point. You want to be able to say these things for people. And, you know, I would love to be able to tell Amy Acker that I loved her on The Gifted, but I didn't want to necessarily continue watching The Gifted, unfortunately. So I'm going to go ahead and give it to Legion, which I
guess
want to finish
Legion
someday.
is Legion.
Legion do be legionin'. Not going to give us Legionnaire's disease. Legion's fantastic. I'm not at all upset about this. I just wanted to fight back against Nico's hatred and disgust with The Gifted.
The only thing they could have done to make it suck worse was put Gambit on it.
Oh God, I'm sure that was part of the pitch.
God. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. So I want to say, growing up, I loved Alfred Hitchcock so much I collected Alfred Hitchcock editions of board games, of which there are more than you'd think. And one of the only DVDs I still have in this whole world that isn't in a bucket somewhere is my 20 Alfred Hitchcock DVD collection. My fandom of his films definitely waned as I got older. I always loved the Hannibal verse. It's something that I talked about with Kevo early on in our friendship before we were ever a couple, because he had a friend who understood that Hannibal and Clarice are meant to be together. And
she did.
Oh, because their love is beautiful, and
so I'm told.
And my whole thing on this is, until you showed me Hannibal, TK, I had no real experience with these shows. I did a little YouTube-iges to get to know Bates Motel a little better. Tori right here saying that she watched both, but left Bates Motel behind after one season and would die for Hannibal to this day.
Yeah.
And I gotta say, I'm 6 in and 7 into Hannibal season 1, and I'm not ready to die for it. But if it cuts into some of my murder podcast time, I'm in. It's really good. Oh, and Bates Motel, you know, what's the point? He's not gay.
Kevo, I want to let you go first on this one.
You know, this is one that I don't really have as much experience with. I mostly want to watch Bates Motel because of the actor Max Thurrott, I think his name is, who it was on a show with David Boreanaz for a little while there, and now he's not anymore. Super hot. But I also don't have much experience with Hitchcock. We've been together 16 years, and you still haven't forced me to watch a single Hitchcock movie. We've watched Alien 15,000 times, and I have never seen Psycho in my life. Never in my life, no version.
I saw Vince Vaughn when it opened in theaters.
Whereas, like Nico pointed out, our friend and contributor Tori, who is in the comments, might think that we are referring to her, but no, that is not the weird friend I had in high school who was obsessed with Hannibal and the Hannibal franchise. Another, you're not watching this, but shout out to Kate, who was very emphatic about the love story between Hannibal and Clarice. So I had seen Silence of the Lambs a few times. I'd seen Hannibal. We watched Red Dragon. Wasn't as big a fan of that one. So I'm a little more well versed, and I'm really interested and intrigued by what we're seeing in Hannibal so far. It's super Brian Fuller if you throw in a lot of Twin Peaks, a lot of Twin Peaks. And I think just generally overall, I kept abreast of, like I do of many shows, Bates Motel more than Hannibal, I think, overall, probably because Bates Motel lasted longer. And I don't remember hearing anything super impressive about Bates Motel over its whole run. I know more people who are really into Hannibal, and I hear consistently decent things about Hannibal, but I don't really feel like I ever heard anything like a twist or anything special or any fanfare about the way it ended, for sure. So definitively, I would say my vote has to go to Hannibal for these overall reasons.
Two things. I need a moment, because then TK, you got to sound off like you are the cast of Stomp with Garbage Pail. Two things. Number one, I did not know that. So my other favorite films of all time. Oh my God, I'm covering poor Kevo. My other favorite
fine,
films.
I was waving.
I know, but I think The Conjuring are like the greatest horror films ever, and Familia, so good in them. I know that they are a complete misinterpretation of reality, but so much about the Warrens is, and those are
that is fictional interpretation. We love this fictionalized version of them.
God, I think they are like the greatest. They're the greatest couple in any horror.
I didn't know this was her. I never realized she was Bates Motel.
Now I'm gonna watch Bates Motel a whole lot more carefully. But
my vote.
I gotta just say, it is super exciting to see legendary penciler of Kid Riot, Taran Glima, coolest effing dude to ever pencil a comic. Not gonna lie, seen Silence of the Lambs before having seen Psycho, still haven't seen Psycho yet. Just super cool to see you, famous comic dude, or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hi, Taran. I'm giving it to Hannibal. I'm the person who showed you guys Hannibal, so I clearly like it quite a lot. And I do like Bates Motel. I don't like saying bad things about people, but I don't maybe get how Freddie Highmore has had so much work. I don't get.
I've never even heard of him.
You have, unfortunately.
Yeah. It's just one of those things where, you don't realize it. Right now he's in a show playing an autistic doctor, and he is also Charlie.
Jane Leaves is on.
What's that?
Jane Leaves is on that, right?
Probably. He's also Charlie in the Johnny Depp Wonka situation.
So he was also the Peter Pan kid bassist in Finding Neverland because of that as well.
Yeah. He is a very boyish dude who is like significantly older than. Yeah, he's 31 now, and Charlie, like he was like 20 when he was playing a little kid in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. So anyway, I don't really. He doesn't really do it for me. And as a leading man, as Norman Bates of all people, it just, compared to Vera, I just don't see it. I feel like part of it is that who I want to see playing Norman Bates is somebody who would be sexy if he wasn't abused.
Oh my God, Anthony Perkins was so sexy, it's insane. It's
like somebody
insane
who
how
the
hot
whole
he
point
was.
is that, like, he's hunched. It's like that Clark Kent thing where, like, Clark is really hunched over and looks kind of paunchy, and that's because he's trying to not be the gorgeous person that is Superman. And in this case, Norman Bates' mother has so broken him down that even though he would be beautiful, he is not. And Freddie Highmore just kind of isn't that person. He has other really great qualities, but for me, that casting is so off that, like, yeah. Hannibal is one of the most perfect, beautiful, wonderful model Linda Evangelista television shows that has ever existed. It 3 really flawless seasons. The fact that they managed to get through without having the rights to Clarice and Buffalo Bill and managed to still do some really great stuff, that they created such a phenomenal character for Gillian Anderson. There's just so much about it that is wonderful. And really, it feels like everything about it could exist and be exactly what it is without having the Hannibal name attached to it. That just, that is
I see that.
Yeah, it's the
And
period where we force shows to be based on something, and that's how you get people in. So this is based on Hannibal, but it really doesn't need to be.
Cannibal.
To me, it really is a story about Lucifer on Earth, and I think it is just so good and so perfect. And so, yeah, I think we are 3 gentlemen voting for
Hannibal.
Hannibal.
It's Hannibal. Dun, 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 dun.
Okay.
Now,
I'm gonna
I know
kick
we're going to
stuff.
break some hearts with this one.
I don't know how we could. I think that Batman the Animated Series is one of the finest endeavors in animated history. X-Men the Animated Series did a lot of incredible things, and it is responsible for shaping the minds of so much of fandom and launching generations of fans. But if you are asking me for analysis of quality animated Fox cartoon, and I think that you
are.
This is why I'm saying you're going to break hearts.
That the original run of Batman the Animated Series from 1992 to 1999 on Fox Kids and Kids WB, my God, what a phenomenal feat of animation. It is responsible for... So what people don't realize is Batman was kind of funny in the 70s. Batman was kind of funny in the 80s. And then Frank Miller said, that stuff I just did for Daredevil, I'm going to do it for Batman. And DC was like, yes, please. Okay. And then Alan Moore came in and was like, and everybody said, okay, you can do the other books. And Alan Moore, that is Alan Moore as Swamp Thing, by the way. Saga.
That old classic.
I just need it to be clear that Batman the Animated Series gave us Harley Quinn, is responsible for bringing Mr. Freeze back. Mr. Freeze or Sub-Zero. It might be Sub-Zero. I might have that backward. But
it reinvented his story through the backstory of his wife in such a way that was uncanny and revolutionary.
I believe it actually was his first appearance in like 20 years as well. And they were so careful with Clayface, who's like one of the oldest Batman villains ever. I think he's in Detective Comics like 30. Like, he's old. And I know this doesn't sit right with everybody, but they're the only thing that kind of comes close to, because I don't think anything in the MCU has it, but the only thing that comes close to the sheer perfection on screen of Ian McKellen and Patrick Stewart is Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill.
Yeah, Batman and the Joker, for anybody who doesn't realize.
Yeah, that Batman and Joker. Mask of the Phantasm is probably just like 4 episodes, but it's like the best Batman movie ever made. And I'm not here to talk about this anymore. I got to stop. I got to let other people talk. But Batman in the Animated Series is quite truly why I'm a noirist. And like it shaped. I mean, I used to collect Batman just as much as Daredevil. And I will always love Batman.
Yeah, I mean, I I am not an X-Men fan because of X-Men the Animated Series, but it sure did help with my burgeoning thing. It gave me Cliff's Notes versions of every important storyline so that I could go read them with a solid background and amount of knowledge, such that, like, rather than trying to do the thing where I was really trying to understand everything that's happening in the comic, I already know how it's going to end. Although, like, Phoenix isn't going to get given a piece of everybody's life force and resurrected in the comics, but whatever.
I discovered what fun was, and so now I'm going to kill a bunch of people. Never mind. Here's your red head. Peace. I'm going to space.
It was definitely an important thing for me. I really loved it, and I was always so amazed at how many characters they managed to bring to life, and it was so cool to see them animated. But, like, here's one big thing. This is one really big plus in the column of Batman. The stylization and the aesthetic of Batman the Animated Series is incomparable. Never been done, has not been done since even, all of the Justice League cartoons that have come after that have really tried to spend on that. It's been almost unfortunate because that there were animators out there that were associated with Batman that could have been like, let's give you your own aesthetic, and instead they just kind of try and rehash the Batman one, and it's real unfortunate.
And it is worth pointing out that it was in a lot of ways adapting the film.
Yeah.
And so, I just want to make sure that is said, where it was amazing, and they definitely pulled it off and carried it across in ways that somehow were ultimately taken more seriously in the films frequently. Yeah. But,
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. I think, pound for pound, if we were talking about, like, getting stuff adapted for animation, we get a ton of stuff from Batman comics, from the films. In Batman the Animated Series, we had a ton of stuff from X-Men comics. There were no films at the time. But if we were to say, like, both of those things are basically equal, they both do that, they both do a great job, then it would be on aesthetics alone, it would have to go to Batman because it really is just so strong. But the fact of the matter is, though they both managed to adapt a lot of material, Batman just does it better. Batman also does original stories better.
And just Harley. It's just gotta be Harley.
Yeah, Harley's a big thing because we're not talking about X-Men Evolution where we got X-23. And
even if this one gave us Jubilee, I'm telling you right now, they would have done a different thing with Gen X, and Jubilee would still be the cultural touch point for young women who came of age with this generation of X-Men. She is such a perfect, dynamic, brilliant, genius, non-stop, well-thought character.
Yeah. Nothing
would have stopped Jubilee from being a cultural touch point.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. So yeah, I mean, like, where I absolutely would give X-Men the Animated Series a B plus, and an A plus in my heart for what it did for a young child. Objectively, Batman is an A plus, just no matter how you slice it.
And, I am such an outlier when it comes to everyone's fervor for X-Men the Animated Series.
Yes, you
I
are.
never found it appealing. I specifically found it off-putting. I don't know that I've ever put it in such direct words at any point in our relationship, but I found Wolverine specifically very off-putting.
I get it.
And Nico's adoration for Wolverine at first was a bit of a stumbling block. I found him mean in a way that affected a young and tough but incredibly fey Kevo, who doesn't feel like Wolverine would have been very nice to him.
I understand that. I really understand, because, like, knowing the character, Wolverine loves gays, he hates racists. So, like, knowing the character, I'm like, he would have loved you and your toughness. He wouldn't have liked racists.
And now I know the character a lot better, and it's going on 10 years now that I know the character better alone, let alone anything else. But, like, it's just at the time and what it represented for me at the time. I thought Batman was a much nicer man, and yeah, just I think overall, I'm a nicer man than anyone on the show, not even than just Wolverine. Who else was there? Scott, Charles.
How did I get here?
I found a lot of the team aggressive and gruff, and I found the music really aggressive, which is a very funny thing to lead into our next subject. But let's wrap this one out first.
Yeah, guy wrote 2 theme songs. He wrote both the X-Men and I believe X-Men is by Haim Saban, right?
Yeah.
The X-Men theme is by Haim Saban, as is the Power Rangers theme. Okay, this is hard. Okay, I think Astronomer.
Wait, hold on. My husband says he's divorcing me. What did I do for
I think
divorce?
he meant
Jacob?
No, I think he was
meant
saying
us.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the Wolverine thing is grounds for divorce.
Okay.
So I thought the Power Rangers was cute and didn't really. I just wanted toys, and my husband was like, "I love Power Rangers," and I was like, "Okay, fine, I'll give it a chance." And I don't want to sound ridiculous, but man, there are some emotionally brilliant arcs in picking Batman over X-Men. I think that's what Jake says. No, UTK. I wonder if Jake is now clarifying.
Picking Batman over Jacob, I am shocked to hear you say this. We will discuss in due time. But I thought you'd be on board with me. I love Tuss, but
I think he was doing the popular thing.
Yeah, Batman just is a better show. X-Men was more important to me, but Batman's a better show. Anyway, to get back to the Rangers versus
only 3 seasons.
Yeah, I only want to break into Nico's preamble because I want to point out I specifically listed here Mighty Morphin Power Rangers versus the American presentation.
And then 2 of my favorite seasons are missing
that we were aware of from our childhood because I felt that was more specifically fair.
Yeah. Oh no, you're absolutely right because both shows have. Later. I mean, it's a little different for Power Rangers because Power Rangers essentially continues all the way through for a while, where Sailor Moon, it just gets new and better adaptations.
Because this is tough.
So there is still extra for both to take into consideration, but for the core, it's what was the 90s-ish.
What was the 90s, guys? We can't answer that for you.
Well, and I almost feel bad for Sailor Moon after having read the backstory of how it was presented and seeing that all of the original first 2 seasons that aired were within like 3 months and then it disappeared and came back. It so much more severely struggled for notoriety and recognition than Power Rangers did in the US, and you can't knock that. That's good for them because I definitely was aware of it in our youth. I wasn't not aware for sure. So it got its foothold.
So my 2 favorite seasons of Power Rangers are Zeo and In Space.
Yeah.
I actually think it's really funny that Turbo actually, like, if you watch Turbo, all of the bad guys are like hyper exaggerations of Americana. And I think that the cars are the Zords. It's a really great statement, but like it's just handled a little.
Sentai was a satire, but it didn't translate.
Yeah. But Zeo is a great story, and Lost Galaxy is amazing, and Astronema is like the greatest Ranger character of all time. But she's not here, and I don't get to count her. So this is just the original 3 Rangers versus... Kevo, can you just help me out? There's 4 seasons. Oh my gosh, this doesn't include... okay, so this is...
No, Alien Rangers of Aquitar is technically its own entity.
No, I don't even mean that. I mean the Sailor Moon. This is 4 seasons of Sailor Moon, not 5. It's not the 200 episodes that make up the whole series. So this is like Sophie's Choice, where you're not really... Only TK is going to get this, and Tori too, but this is like telling Frank he has to pick between Mutant Child A and Mutant Child B in the pages of Punisher. Neither one of these is whole.
Yeah, I mean,
all right.
If only we were comparing it to Mystic Knights of Tir na Nog.
Yes, if only we were comparing it to Superhuman. I'm sorry, Tattooed Teenage Alien Fighters from Beverly Hills.
There you go.
And also Superhuman
Jake.
Samurai Cyber Squad and VR Troopers are mentioned here
Beetleborgs.
by Jake. I want to do something talking about all... Oh, Beetleborgs I adored when it
Yeah.
came out. I was
Same.
going through some stuff in middle school.
Beetleborgs.
I wanted to be Flabber. Ah!
No, did you really?
No, but
Okay.
I had to play every role.
Oh, God bless.
So, okay, here's what I will say. This is tough, but I think as an adult, I am more influenced by Power Rangers, but recognize that maybe Sailor Moon had a little more intentionality put into the creation of the project. Haim Saban has been very, I made a dumb kids show, leave me alone. And the creators of Sailor Moon are like, we've made a show that inspires people and brings joy. And I love that kind of comparison because they both made exactly what they meant to. And I think Power Rangers is dumb stuff that I love, but Sailor Moon is better stuff that I love a little less. And I'm gonna click Power Rangers because I like the toys more. I'm so sorry.
Stunned. I love this comment from Tori. It's times like these that I feel like Child Kevo and Child Nico might have been sworn enemies who were still nice to each other. We go back and forth on what we would have been in the various timelines when we met when we were younger. There are timelines where we were enemies. There are timelines where we are best friends.
Yeah.
Really, Power Rangers, I am stunned because I really thought TK was going to have to be the tiebreaker. I feel like, you know, my obvious answer is Power Rangers. I don't have as much experience and backstory in Sailor Moon. We watched it.
Yeah, this is shocking. This was tough
during that really weird year between our college programs. But I haven't watched it since, and I want to. I'd love to get more to better know it, and I think it's a lot of really cool stuff. But
I'm ashamed.
I'm going to, since I don't have to break a tie, I'm going to vote for Sailor Moon.
Can I have a second vote, please?
Was it close at all?
For me, it's like, I mean, guys, when I say it's like 50.1 versus 49.9,
Yeah.
it's like it hurts. If this had been exactly this Power Rangers versus the 200 episodes that make up the 5 series of the Sailor Moon anime, then no, Sailor Moon would have won.
Yeah.
What if it was the Zordon era of
Then Power Rangers would have won.
though? Because then that's... Yeah.
But if Pretty Guardian Sailor Moon were on the table, Pretty Guardian Sailor Moon would win. So it's really just about, you know, whether or not I get to do my ninja impression.
At the end of the day, these are both 2 fantastic imports from Japan.
Just
that
2 tremendous
we
series.
Chose to tweak in really weird, stupid ways, but they, I think, making these stupid mistakes with, in the 90s with our semi-forgiving young generation that was sort of starved for content allowed for both things to really develop. And anime got a foothold in the US in the way that it did, I think really in large part because of Sailor Moon. And Power Rangers, it's a juggernaut to this day in terms of kids television. And, you know, Netflix is giving us that reunion special in a few weeks, months.
Weeks. The 19th? We'll do something, I'm sure.
Yeah,
Rocky
absolutely.
and TJ, 2 hottest Rangers we should still be talking about.
But
was it even close for you, or was it
for me?
just obviously Sailor Moon?
No, it was very, very close. Honestly, if the Power Rangers hadn't won specifically, I would be having a very different conversation. I love Power Rangers a lot. I probably have seen more Power Rangers than Sailor Moon. I just a big thing for me is the Sailor Moon aesthetics are so
good.
Gorgeous.
Yeah.
And the Power Rangers
Defining.
aesthetics are really aspirational, but concretely, they don't always come. You know, spandex and lycra are tough to work with, and when you make them reflective, things just get even more off the rails, kids.
They look
And-
like Crash Test Dummies cast in the musical Cats. It's just
And not the band Crash Test Dummies, which that would be an amazing show.
I didn't put up the nicknames for these, which were
Memories.
Fighting for Girls and Fighting for Boys, which, so basic and reductive, but it was what it felt like in so many ways.
100%.
For as much as we are trying to challenge gender norms, it is harder to lead boys to something like Sailor Moon, which is why I think something like Avatar: The Last Airbender and its franchise has done a really good job of taking, a lot of the spirit of Sailor Moon and a lot of the aesthetic that you guys are talking about that you love and making something that I think is a lot more gender inclusive.
Well, and this was 1995. There was no way. I mean, I watched it in secret. Because there was no way I could be a boy who watched Sailor Moon.
I had the best team of mostly fag hags of Asian descent. Hey, ladies. And so they were like, they would go home to China, Korea, Japan, and they would come home and they would come back to America with like bags of toys. And they knew that as a kid I was super into Mercury, and so like everyone would bring me Sailor Mercury stuff. And
Nice.
then it's a really funny thing because like one thing I do want to say is I grew up being a Mercury and a Billy and a Blue Ranger, and I was like 18 before somebody was like, "Oh, you're Mercury and Blue. That's the same thing, dude." And I was like, "Oh wow, it is." And now when people are like, "What Rangers are you?" I'm like, "I'm Red Ranger and I'm Sailor Moon." And like I see now that I've tightest myself as to this is my story, and so I see that connectivity, right? And that's something that the Power Rangers and Sailor Moon, no matter whether you're a boy, girl, non-binary, or identify as something that you just don't know how to express yet, there are so many multitudinal experiences within the communities of Power Rangers and magical girl manga and anime at large, but also including magical boy manga. Is that what you call Dragon Ball Z? Is it magical boy?
No, that's God, there's a whole other name for it, but no, it's not. Magical Boy really is, it's kind of like Bara, where like it doesn't really exist, but it totally does. And like,
okay,
if we just move the dial a little bit, it will be a thing. But yeah, I mean, Nico famously loves Cardcaptor Sakura. I love
like
Revolutionary Girl Utena. There are so many great ones that were of that era, but we just didn't have the same access to in America. And kids, because I know so many young people and kids are watching this. The anime of our years, of the mid to late 90s and the early 2000s, there's a ton of merit to it. The good people at Adult Swim clearly felt this way because that's where we saw a lot of it. And I just think it doesn't all have to be Attack on Titan.
Wait, I'm sorry. I know we were talking about some stuff, but I got. What do you mean? There's other animes other than Attack on Titan?
It turns out, yeah.
They're called Bleach.
You could also set My Hero Academia aside if you wanted, but Serial Experiments Lane is the greatest anime ever made, and I think none of you kids know what it is.
So I just want to throw out there that Tori also said Pokemon vs. Digimon, which was on the list, but frankly, without our resident monkey and anime expert Jonah, there really is no reason to talk about Pokemon ever on this channel. We would be chewed apart and spit out.
I think Jonah and I specifically have to have a battle of the 90s anime versus the 2010s, 2020s anime.
All right, let's do this. I don't want to get my ass kicked, but I'm voting Legion.
I mean, I'm Hannibal. You know it.
Gene Smart's performance on Legion is like spectacular.
It is fantastic. This is a pretty close one for me, but it's interesting. Both 3-season shows, both with this flawed, charismatic lead and this larger than, I don't want to say life, but larger than like the scope of the screen villain that just permeates the whole show. These shows are very similar in really cool ways. For me, it's Hannibal.
Yeah, it's as I'm developing more experience with Hannibal, it's getting closer. But for now and for this vote today, I think I'm going to go with Legion.
I am disgusted with you.
Hey, I'm getting there.
A sense of relief.
You want to carry me across the finish line or not?
When you get to Gillian Anderson's therapy sessions with Zachary Quinto. You are going to have regretted this vote deeply, and I will not be there to
I'm going to care about Scully talking to Spock. Moving on.
How I vote today.
All right.
Why isn't Tori spelling on Hannibal?
I mean, for me, it's Batman all the way, unequivocally.
It's going to be Batman for me because my 2 favorite seasons are missing. So it's got to be Batman.
Oh, well, there you go.
There's moments are gone.
There's my kick. Are you happy?
Yeah, I assume you were going to be Rangers, right?
I was going to be Rangers.
Yeah. Sorry, I can't do that.
It's fine. Although I have to admit, generally speaking, overall quality,
Surprise,
blah,
Marvel
blah, blah.
versus DC.
Yeah.
It's
Batman.
Still Batman.
Yeah, it's still Batman.
Yeah.
This is the dumbest final.
Holy shit! This is the stupidest 2 I've ever seen in my life.
And
I regret.
I thought it was going to be Power Rangers versus Modern Family. As I was looking at
this game.
Yeah.
Whole final list.
Yeah.
I love this part, especially for brackets like this, where it's just. What?
Okay.
Because usually, well, I shouldn't say usually, we haven't done a ton of these, but in the past, we get a lot of really weird stuff early, in the second round that we weren't expecting. To have this ridiculous of a matchup at the end.
I love that they're next to each other on in the order. That wasn't even on purpose.
Oh,
for any
here
of
you
us.
go.
It's just how it worked.
Hey.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to go first because I'm at the top. And that tops always finish first. So I'm going to say Modern Family.
Holy shit.
And to explain why for a minute, Batman continued the reinvention of Batman in the public eye. But I kind of became less othered in the course of Modern Family. And I know there's tons of people who feel like they've seen tons of it. And don't get me wrong, I get it. But until you watch it, you can't appreciate it. It's really easy to snark about something from the sidelines, and that's, But there's this particular arc where the whole first half of the series, Phil needs his father-in-law. So Ty Burrell, the dad, needs, the dad from All in the Family I gotta go. Married with Children to like him. And the whole series, Jay just takes shots at Phil's expense, and then finally one day, Jay is having a personal crisis and reveals that it's because he just got a call that one of his army buddies died, and whenever one of his army buddies dies, they all go to their local Irish bar and they toast a drink to the person at exactly this time, and everything he's done to get out has failed, and silently Phil makes it happen for me. He puts a little shamrock decoration out and serves him a shot and just steps away. And for the first time in literally the entire show, in no joke, 170 episodes, Phil just shuts his stupid mouth and just lets Jay have this moment. And because of all of this, Jay offers Phil a shot and they share the shot together. And then shortly after that, when Phil asks Jay for advice on a business investment, Jay just invests because the show thinks about progressive changes in relationships, and it's about the tapestry of relationship, right? It would be great if we could all say every relationship was as simple and cut and dry as this is how I feel about that person. But even the person that you dislike the most, that you wish you didn't, it's because you still love them sometimes. And the complexity of that cannot be showcased in Batman quite as readily as it can in a show where the people are physically alive. And for that reason, Modern Family, and also there's a couple of jokes in particular, and I can't say one of them right now because we're trying to curse less, but anybody who doesn't think that Lily grows up to be one of the funniest kids on that show does not appreciate her. And also Sarah Hyland is literally a goddess.
It's not just the circumstances of them being physically alive, but also just the circumstances that they find in, where you can do a lot more diverse stories across the board with something like Modern Family than Batman, which you can't escape that it's superheroes pretty much ever.
My vote is for Batman. I have not had as many of these moments with Modern Family, which, like I said, I really am growing to like. But I did not experience the sort of connection and reflection in the characters. And for me, Batman was huge in making me a fan of superhero books and of showing me the ropes and the tropes and exposing me to things like design aesthetic and animation decisions, artistic decisions. And it just was such a fundamental part of my childhood, and it was so present at all times. I just really don't know who I would be without that very early seed that show planted. And of course, the same is true of X-Men, the animated series. I just recognize now as an adult that a lot of those choices are not of the same caliber that I once felt they were, and definitely not the same caliber as Batman. So yeah, my vote is absolutely for Batman, but I do think that I have been outvoted on this one.
And, Tori made a comment earlier that really spoke to what you said, where she mentioned rewatching Batman. It continues to have a lot of aesthetic appeal, whereas rewatching X-Men now as an adult, she kind of more wonders what it was she found as appealing then. So it even goes both ways, where like she wasn't like me. I think she probably found it a little bit more aggressive than perhaps something like a Power Rangers or a Sailor Moon. And so it I think if any iteration or interpretation of Batman was going to beat Modern Family, it would be this.
Oh yeah.
And I am so pleased with how far it did come, for how significant and relevant and great it is. But yeah, no, for me overall, I'm gonna stick with my vote.
I think it might have been availability of women, Tori. I think Batman had female characters, but it didn't have women with interiority and complexity.
Yeah.
Even if the women, and Power Rangers had young women. It had older girls.
As did Batman. Batman had Barbara, but it did not have women.
And X-Men gave you women.
Yeah.
Even when they failed to be as complex as we would hope.
Which is just Jean. Storm and Rogue are complex. You also get the gamut of ages, but yeah.
All right, so Modern Family defeats Batman,
which is a sentence we get to say on X's for show. So,
and just to tie it all together, there is an episode where Cam, Mitch, and Lily on Halloween go as Batman, Robin, and Batgirl. So there is an episode of Cameron dressed as Batman running through the streets on Halloween, even though it is an ABC-owned show that ran on Fox, so it was never affiliated with a WB channel.
Fox show ran on ABC, but yes.
Right, thank you. Now they're all owned by Disney, so it really doesn't matter anymore.
Not everything. Disney owns everything.
I went to a Disney gas pump the other day, and I used my Disney credit card while I was on my Disney phone. So
can I tell you how much I would not hate that?
If Chipotle still did their thing, I would find a way to survive. Like, as long as there's still Chipotle and I can get a burrito anywhere. Anyway,
Disney is a good owner of Chipotle. If McDonald's ever sold it off.
Oh boy, everybody gets burritos! It's gonna be the greatest day of our lives.
I heard that from the next room on a delay, and I didn't know what was coming.
Sorry about it. So, okay.
That was so great, guys. What a stupid final matchup in the best possible way.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody, so much for joining us. We will keep thinking of ways that we can get you the stupidest possible matchups, because that's where the magic is.
Wait, can I want to ask a question. TK, you've heard the pitch.
Yeah.
Can I pitch my new show for our audience?
Yeah, guys, I think you should hear this. I think we're doing a version of this. The rules are not set in stone.
Okay.
But
I'm ready.
This has not been run by me.
No, it certainly is not, Kevo.
Kevin's gonna say no, he doesn't want anything to do with it.
Yeah.
So, I've come up with a game.
Let me bring up the credit where it says that I am the producer of this program.
I'm calling it Deal Breakers, and there's a topic, and your 3 panelists each bring their top 3 in that topic, and then you have a list of 9 things, and your goal is to make sure your pick survives to the end while pointing out while all of the others might be deal breakers, and your goal is to never point out a deal breaker that could be turned around on one of your own shows or albums or books or songs. And so it is in fact an entire show about discrediting everyone else's opinion.
The silence, I love it. Yeah, guys, I mean, the long and short of it being that we will be doing more...
I just got a part for that.
We will be doing more ridiculous shows and comparisons and poking at pop culture every way that we can. So stick with us because we're going to have cool stuff coming.
What do you think, guys? Deal breakers?
He'll explain it more to you off the air and you'll like it, I promise.
Wait, but hold on.
Yes,
chaotic fighter.
he is the chaotic fighter that many people long to be, and the chaotic fighter that when you are attempting to keep him in the ring, is all sorts of different kinds of fun.
Yeah, be his manager.
Tori actually has tried, so.
And she is a vital part of the Nico control team.
Mm-hmm.
Part of why we, like I said at the top, covered these topics as well is to illustrate the wealth of programs and content and things that we have interest in. So if you liked what you heard about anything that we had to say on any of these topics, make sure to comment that as well, so we can be inspired for future content.
And I would like to point out that the next one that I'm pushing for is going to be, I'm pushing for one that compares movie franchises. And we'll come up with the top movie franchise of all time. I know we've got some more X-Men related ones, some more comic related ones. We've got some other really fun ones, and I can't wait to do all of them. But before we can do any of that, we got to tell everybody where they can find us online.
Well, you can find me at XNateXGrayX. I am primarily on Twitter, though who knows if that will be the case tomorrow. People seem very upset about this blue check mark situation, and I get why, but I love the written word, and I love minimalism. So, I really do love Twitter, but I'm on Instagram with the same name. I'm on Tumblr with the same name. I'm on Hive. So should Twitter implode the way that it constantly seems like it's about to, just look for XNateXGrayX, and it's me.
Hey, Kevo, where can everybody find you, Kevo?
You can similarly find me on the socials at Kevoreally. That's KEVOREALLY. And more predominantly, like I said, pulling the strings on all the different productions we do here. We got an exciting live stream coming tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Got some really cool and exciting things planned for that as well, and some really fun guests. So we're looking forward to bringing you our usual show.
And as always, you can find me right here and at Nico Action. That's NICOACTION on Twitter, Instagram, and more. I am so lucky to get to do this wonderful show with the
Stage left.
Bye. Until next time.
Just bye.
Remember, until next time, keep those brackets bracketing. Get ready for deal breakers, ladies! And we'll see you all soon.